Hey you guys, it's Slash Passion here. I'm here to do the final part of my What's Broken So Far series. Just gonna sum up my feelings on this truck with regard to its durability and what you're really gonna need to put some money into. Well, in case you can't tell, this is a Traxxas / 4x4. It came with the 2.4 GHz Traxxas Link radio. Coming up in about a month or so, I've owned the truck for a full year. I've owned and operated this truck. I put excess of 400 battery packs through it. I think it's safe to say that I know what I'm talking about when it comes to what is going to break and what is not going to break on this truck. Alright, so in my previous videos I stated, some pretty simple things. I think I mentioned maybe front suspension arms. That was something that I broke. Shock caps, I did replace those with aluminum to prevent oil from spilling out when I would drive it on the track. Front and rear bumpers, after a period of driving, those did start to crack and those would fail. They worked alright, but now I have RPM bumpers and these don't even show signs of any significant wear that's going to end up breaking them. So those are definitely some things that you're going to need to replace. Rear body mount, that had to get replaced with RPM eventually. So those are just a few things that really needed upgrades. You've got shock caps, front and rear bumpers, I think definitely front suspension arms, and rear body mount. Also one thing that I did end up having to replace were the rear hub carriers, and I replaced those with RPM. Now, I am listing these things, but none of it's aluminum. The only thing that was aluminum were the shock caps, but it's not like you can have RPM shock caps, so. But, right, the thing is, this truck doesn't need a whole lot of expensive upgrades. In fact, I don't really think the most expensive upgrade you need to buy for this truck is like a cooling fan or something for the ESC, or really tires, to be honest with you. Personally, I invested my money into a stainless steel screw kit. That was just me because I didn't like the screws did unfortunately strip out a lot if you were like me and you didn't clean your truck quite as thoroughly as you should have after you drove it in the rain. But like I said, so things that tend to break, right, after you get those upgrades that I mentioned, nothing really tends to break on the truck. You really have commodity pieces that wear on any truck, like the center spur gear. Obviously, if you have the slipper clutch, that does wear, and that will eventually go out on you. But that really, properly set mesh and everything, it takes a pretty long time for you to strip that out, and I just have like 3 of them extra in my toolbox, so when I really need to replace it, it's just right there. That's a cheap part. That's going to happen on all trucks, and that's one thing that happens on this truck. Not really a fatal flaw. Next thing, you've got the rear drive shafts, the rear half shafts. Those do wear and those will snap. But one thing that I can report is that out of those 400 runs, I've only had to replace these shafts once, and that's the front ones. I mean the rear ones. The front ones are still the original that came on the truck. So with a properly set slipper clutch, where you're not like fully locked down, so you can do wheelies on command, and running on that's another thing. Through those runs, I never took the truck on 3S. It was never above 3S. It was always running on 2S, and for the most of the time, it was running on stock gearing with, I believe, like a 13-tooth pinion. I think a 13-tooth pinion and a 54 spur, as opposed to like the 18 or something. I think it was an 18-tooth pinion speed gearing, but I never ran it on the speed gearing. I only ran it on the speed gearing for like 20 packs, not much. So I've got pretty much, if you leave the car in the stock configuration, it's very durable. A lot of these things weren't really even the truck's fault. It's just I broke them and I'm like, RPM, what the heck? The rear hub carriers, those could have that's obviously still my fault. Those really only recently broke. I'd say I at least got 200 runs through the thing before those went, and that was kind of a slow thing. They cracked, and then they cracked more, and then they finally gave way. Front suspension arms, that was just me running it into a pole. That's why those broke. So that wasn't really a fundamental issue. But point being, it's not. The upgrades aren't expensive. It's really an incredibly durable truck. There is nothing that you really need to upgrade straight out of the box. You just buy RPM when it breaks. It's that simple. And considering that RPM's only a few bucks more than Traxxas parts, you're really, the truck is incredibly sound, mechanically. Also, nothing else has gone wrong. The drivetrain is so solid on this truck. Still got the same original center drive shaft. Still got, like I said, mostly just the half shaft. So it's the only drivetrain piece that I've had to replace. So, overall, with regard to the durability of this truck, is it durable? Is it reliable? Is it long-lasting? Absolutely. It's amazing how really tough this truck is. Kind of a feat of engineering, if you ask me. The only other thing that really broke, that really shouldn't have broke, that was not my fault, and that is a fundamental problem with all trucks that have it, is this right here, this Traxxas 2075 servo. That is notorious for, just breaking after a certain period of time. I do have a video up on how I fixed this one, right? It's gone out 3 times, it's done that, and I've had to I use the method in my video. It's called How to Fix Your Traxxas 2075 Servo. And I post exactly what I do every single time that it does that. But that's like that 3rd servo I've had in it. I've had to buy 2 others, and this is currently the 3rd servo, right? And this is the one that I've just continuously fixed, and it's getting a bit long in the tooth right now, so I can feel it is getting slower. Gonna have to replace that eventually. But when you replace that, just replace it with the high-tech waterproof servos, which have much better specs, and they're $10 more, right? This is $40 in the high-tech one. For a metal gear ball bearing, it's like $50 or $55. So really not that much more expensive. So, like I said, back to the main point. There is nothing out of the box that you really need, quote-unquote, to upgrade for this truck. So, absolutely. Do I recommend buying it? Yes. It's been a great truck. It's challenged with regard to racing, but that doesn't really matter to me. It's still fun to drive, and I still get a kick out of it. And it's great because you can just really thrash it, and it keeps going. It just doesn't ever break, really, with the way I drive it. Right now, it's in the process of breaking. I've got a front left suspension arm, which is snapped. You can probably see that pretty well. Alright, you can see it right there. And right on that front suspension arm, it's about to crack, but I have a spare one. And that was once again my fault. I was driving it. I had lowered the front suspension just as an experiment, and it hit something on the ground. Like it was dragging on the ground, and it clipped it. So, once again, not the truck's fault. Electronics have all been pretty sound. I did have a problem with the Volanian motor, where the rotor came unglued from the magnets that are attached to the rotor. But Traxxas, they replaced it, no fee. That hasn't happened to a lot of other people. That was just a fluke. Just happened to be my truck. The VXL 3S ESC, it's given me no problems. The truck's been waterproof all the way through. So yeah, absolutely, I recommend it. If you're thinking about buying one and you look at the running videos and you're like, that looks like fun, I like that truck, you're gonna like it. I guarantee it. So please, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this series, and I really hope you got some valuable information, and hope to help you make a decision if you were wondering about anything. And thanks for watching, and don't forget to comment, rate, and subscribe.